So our topic today is sacred sexuality, and not a topic we talk about a lot in church, so watch out. But first of all, I want to tell you a story about a monk who spent his entire life transcribing sacred books, because before there was a printing press, all of those books had to be transcribed painstakingly by all of these monks. So this one monk died. He went to heaven, and St. Peter is greeting him at the gates and says, "Well, come on into heaven. It's open to you. What would you like to do?" And he said, "I would really like to look at the original sacred books." He said, "All right, I'll take you to the library." So he takes him down to the library, and he's just so happy. He's going through the sacred text. And so St. Peter goes back, and a little while later, he hears this blood-curdling scream coming from the library. And he runs down, and he said, "What's the matter?" And he said, "It says celebrate, not celibate." We're fond of saying it's all God, it's all God. And that includes sexuality, but we don't talk about that too much. But we're born with an innate desire for pleasure. And our bodies, as the song says, are a wonderland of pleasure. We have our vision, where we can see beautiful things. We can see the sunrise, we can see the sunset, we can see the blooming of a flower. We can take pleasure in a painting or a movie or a book, all of these wonderful gifts of vision. And then we have our hearing. We can hear this beautiful music. We can hear the flowing brook. We can hear the wind in the trees. We can hear all of these beautiful things that give us pleasure. The voice of a friend, the voice of our beloved, the voice of a child, the laughter of a child. You know, these things are joyful to us and pleasurable for us. And we have our hands. We feel our hands in the earth. We feel our hands kneading dough. We feel our hands caressing a pet or a person. All of these things are gifts. Smelling flowers. You know, Valentine's Day, the flowers were just going out of Safeway. I couldn't believe it. But everybody's got these beautiful flowers, you know, and I'm very fortunate that I have some very fragrant roses in my yard. And every time I get out of my car, I go over and smell the roses. You know, they say stop and smell the roses. I do, because they just are wonderful. So we have that wonderful smell of the flowers or food cooking or the freshly bathed baby, you know, a wonderful, wonderful smell. And of course, our tastes. We taste yummy foods. You know, they always show the woman eating a chocolate in slow motion. You know, laughing, singing, sharing stories, all of these wonderful things that our mouth can do. So we have all of these wonderful senses, and sexual pleasure uses all of the senses. It's an amazing gift that we've been given. So where did we get the idea that sex was dirty? Well, it's because the Pleasure Palace is located next to the waste disposal plant. Biology is destiny, right? So I think that's where the first idea that things were dirty came from. But, you know, we were told in the Bible to go forth and multiply, right? So it must have acknowledged that sex was necessary for that. Of course, it put a lot of rules and regulations about that, you know. You were supposed to only do it in the missionary position. I mean, that was a sin if you did it in any other position. I never confessed to that, I'll tell you that. But, so we have all these rules and regulations. Congratulations. And I recently saw a talk by an atmospheric scientist who happens to be an evangelical Christian, and she goes around to evangelical Christian communities and colleges and tells them that climate change is real and they need to do something about it. So she said, remember where it says, go forth and multiply? Check. We don't need to do that. It's done. Right? And fortunately, we have the capability now to enjoy sexual pleasure without worrying about procreation. Because I know when I was a young person, we did not have birth control, or we had it in very awkward and difficult ways. And, so a lot of people got pregnant that weren't expecting to. And I've had several friends who had to give up a child because they got pregnant as teenagers. Their parents sent them off to Catholic families elsewhere, and they gave birth to the child and it went up for adoption. So, we're fortunate that we can now enjoy sexual pleasure just for the pleasure of it, because we're supposed to be enjoying life. Why would life give us the capability to enjoy and take it away from us? I don't think so. Now the thing is, Ernest Holmes actually talked about sex, in a way, in his 1926 textbook. So we have something called the teaching symbol. It has the triune nature of spirit, all one and yet threefold within the oneness. So Ernest Holmes said, the universe is threefold in nature: spirit, soul, and body. Spirit at the top, soul in the middle, body at the bottom. Spirit is the active, projective, masculine factor. Soul is the receptive, creative, feminine factor. And body is the result of the union of spirit and soul. The spirit impregnates the soul with its ideas. The soul gives form to these ideas and clothes them with flesh. But this is the trinity of unity, the trinity of oneness, for the three are really one. And then he says, life is androgynous. It contains within itself both the masculine and feminine factors. The male and the female of creation come from one principle. All come from the one, all return to the one, are now in the one, and will forever remain in the one. So all of us have feminine and masculine aspects. We all take an idea and we clothe it in matter and we bring it into manifestation. So it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, the creative process is the same. And back of all manifestation must be the desire to create, the urge to express. This is called the divine urge. I'm back to Ernest again. Desire gathers energy for creative purposes and utilizes power to express itself. So dynamic is this urge that it will cause a little seed to break open in the most solid earth in order that it may express itself in the form of a plant. It is the coming forth of spirit into expression, the loosing of energy into action, and is apparent in all creation. So you might say, every time we have an idea and bring it into fruition, we are doing something that is sexual in nature. So sacred sexuality acknowledges that our life force and our sexual energy originate from the same source. Our life force and our sexual energy come from the same source, of course. It's an expression of awe and wonder that transcends any particular culture. Sex is sacred because of its role in bonding. This is from Psychology Today. So Psychology Every Day says that we are sexual beings. And sacred sex says we make it holy. because everything is holy now. So we don't really have to make it holy. Everything is already holy. It's recognizing that it's holy. Another name for sexual intercourse is lovemaking, right? And since it can be a time of deep connection, intimate relationship is an opportunity for spiritual growth, which is always a growth in love. Which is always a growth in love. Being vulnerable, revealing our wounded places, trusting that we're safe. When we come together in lovemaking, we're opening to an experience beyond our individual selves. We respect and we communicate with each other, either verbally or non-verbally, and we join in the creative dance of life. Now, it's sort of important that if we're going to involve ourselves in the creative dance of life, that we have some understanding of what goes where. And, have you ever watched Dancing with the Stars? Do you see how much work it takes to make something look effortless? So, we sort of expect that we don't, at least when I was coming up, our sex education was biology. Girls look like this, boys look like this, you figure out how they come together. Well, we had to practice, we had to try it. How does that work? So we figure out eventually over time, we can study. There's lots of books and readings on it now. There are certainly lots of videos that we can watch. And so we can figure out, what works for us. Because like dancing, some people like to jitterbug and some people like to waltz. So you have to figure out if you're a waltzer or a jitterbug. And find somebody who likes that kind of dancing with you. So it's important to communicate. Communication is key so that we know what works for us. And it also is possible that what worked for us when we were young, maybe we were jitterbugging when we were young, but now we're waltzing. Things change, our bodily, capabilities change. I mean, we were very fortunate that in the 1900s, we made a lot of deep connections with people in the East, China, Japan, and India. And of course, they celebrated sexuality. They had paintings, they had carvings in the temple showing all of these sexual positions that you would have to have practiced yoga for a very long time to get. But the point of the whole thing is we learn these steps, we go through these things, we have our moves and our fantasies and all these kind of things, but at some point, we have to surrender. We have to let go. We have to let something else take over for us. And that's when we experience ecstasy. That's when we experience that feeling that is beyond reason and self-control. Yeah. So we let go of our reasoning mind. And that is an understanding that our reasoning mind is very helpful, but it's not the be-all, end-all. There's something else, something greater that takes over in an act of sexual pleasure. That we surrender into, we allow something to be taking us to a greater experience of connection and a greater experience of transcendence, where we feel the oneness, where it's not you and me anymore, it's us as one in the one. It's a wonderful and transcendent experience. And it's also good for us. The health benefits of orgasm are very documented. It relieves stress. It helps with insomnia. It releases all kinds of helpful chemicals that boost our immune system. It is a pain blocker. It helps us to live longer. There's a study that says if you have 2 orgasms a week, you will live longer. Alrighty then. You'll feel happier. Yes. If you're in this mode, it helps to regulate your menstrual cycle. And one article said it gives you healthy skin. I don't know. Anyway. But, our society has such an unhealthy relationship with the idea of pleasure. It causes us to repress our natural pleasure and at the same time to seek it out. And that causes feelings of shame and guilt. And so the time has come to let go of the shame and the guilt. The time has come to say, this is a gift from God, and I celebrate it. Jesus in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene says, sin does not exist. You only bring it into manifestation when you act in ways that are adulterous in nature. And what he means by adulterous in nature is that you are separating yourself from the one, separating yourself from goodness, separating yourself from that which is divine in you and in the other. In this also, there was a man who talked about conscious relationship, which is an opportunity to wake up in all areas of life where we are asleep and where we avoid naked contact direct with life. So, it commits us to movement and change by showing us where we most need to grow. We connect not just with our partner, but with our own aliveness as well. So this is a gift to us. And so we can practice pleasure as a spiritual practice. Now, of course, if you want to experience only sexual pleasure, you go to Tantra, right? Fine, I'm sure there's a group up here because there's everything you can ask for in spiritual practice up here. But the thing is, we can experience the pleasure of our vision, of all of our senses every day, and revel in them. Watch the sunrise, watch the sunset, smell the flowers. Just recognize that pleasure is a gift that we are given to celebrate. We're here to celebrate life. God did not send us here to suffer and die. I'm sorry. That's not the truth. The truth is we are here to live in joyful expression of all of our gifts, all of our gifts. And when we're in a relationship where we want to please the other as much as we want to please ourselves, then we're available for the transcendent experience, where the two become one. And that is a sacred experience. It's really a recognition of the one that we are. In the Gnostic Gospel, Philip states, the realized human is fertilized by a kiss and is born of a kiss. This is why we kiss each other, giving birth to each other through the love that is in us. Didn't hear that gospel in church, did you? And Ernest Holmes says, God has imparted our life to us, placing no limitation or condition that would restrict us other than this. Our life must be lived constructively, in unity and love and sympathy with everything around us, if we expect to live it to the fullest. I believe that every person is born to be creative, to live to the fullest, and to be happy and glad and prosperous and whole. And I have one more poem to read you. And this is a poem from Hafiz, who lived in the 1300s. It happens all the time in heaven, and someday it will happen again on earth, that men and women who are married, and men who are lovers, and women who give each other light, often will get down on their knees, and while so tenderly holding their lover's hand, with tears in their eyes, will sincerely speak, saying, "My dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind?" And how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind? So, let us take this in prayer. So we celebrate in this moment the gift of God as pleasure, and realize and recognize that we are able to release any guilt, any shame, any constriction, and we are settling into and realizing and recognizing the power of the physical body to be the source of divine connection, and that we allow ourselves to be in love, to love and be loved, to bring forth that which is bringing us to a higher realization of the all good that is God. And so we acknowledge that our sexual nature is a blessing, and we practice that sexual experience with ourselves and with others, and we are gifted each moment with a greater realization of wholeness and of oneness and of good. And I am grateful for this. I'm grateful for this realization of oneness, this realization of pleasure in unity, of the good of God expressing in this wonderful physical way. And so with great gratitude, I release my word into the law of life itself, knowing that the law fulfills this word, brings it into perfect manifestation. And we affirm this together as we say,
and so it is.